Providing insights to help you grow your business, improve yourself, and add value to those around you. You're listening to the Success is a Choice podcast, where you get a peek into the lives of industry leaders as they share their stories with you.
Welcome, everybody, to the Success is a Choice podcasting network for our Leaders Growing Leaders series. We will get to our leader in just a moment that we are going to highlight today and have a conversation with. But before we do that, I want to remind you that today's episode is made possible by the leadershipplaybook.com, the leadershipplaybook.com. We all want stronger cultures, better teammates, positive leaders. And so one of the tools available out there is the leadershipplaybook.com. Tons of 2-minute video lessons and other resources available to coaches, ADs, and student athletes. The leadershipplaybook.com. Now, for today's Leaders Growing Leaders series, we want to welcome in Jake Von Scherrer. Jake is a longtime high school coach and athletic director. He grew up a lot of leaders. He coached a lot of coaches in his time, and now he's continuing to do that even though he's retired from organized athletics. He writes books. He's the host of the Educational AD podcast, which is quickly approaching Joe Rogan-like downloads, or at least episodes. But the Educational AD podcast with Jake Von Scherrer, he's the author of multiple books. He's a speaker. He's a track official, all-around good guy. Jake Von Scherrer, welcome to the show.
Wow. I'm going to have to take you on the road with me. You stole my Joe Rogan line. I use that all the time. It gets huge laughs. And talking about books, I just pulled a couple off of my bookshelf right here. Mr. Bechler, I've got your books as well. Thanks a lot for having me on.
Yeah. For those of you listening to this on Spotify or Apple or Stitcher or wherever you get your audio, Jake just held up some books that make fine coasters. He held up some Jamy Bechler books, but I appreciate you having those books. I appreciate you showing those, Jake. But yeah, you've done, I don't know, bajillion episodes by now of the Educational AD podcast. And it's really been a great thing for ADs, for educational leaders. You just get so many people on to tell their story, to talk about great things that they're doing at your school. Where did you get the idea to kind of do that podcast? And you've kind of got this niche going where, it seems like you release one a day. You're always talking to people. You're always releasing episodes and adding value. How'd this come about?
Well, hopefully I'm not always talking. I try to always be listening, but I'm retired. And so I have some time on my hands to do this. I enjoy it. I think we do provide a service to, athletic directors and leaders, but the idea, I'll go long story short, and then you can cut me off anytime you want to. 4 years ago, as I was getting ready to retire, it was my last year as an AD. I was also president of our state association. It was the year of COVID. And I was in charge of planning our state conference that year here in Florida. And like many state conferences around February, it got canceled. Well, again, to make a long story short, I got the idea that we could do something virtually. There was this platform, Zoom, Zoom, what the heck is Zoom? And the people that I had lined up to be speakers at our state conference, I contacted them, said, hey, would you be willing to do a Zoom conference? We'll have people, tune in. We ended up doing 20 Zooms. We did 2 a day for 2 weeks, and we didn't charge a thing for it. We just promoted it. and we had presenters from Florida, from really across the country. We ended up having about 1,000 people total log in over that 2-week period. And it was a really fun thing. We got our state association, me, I guess, we got some positive press about it. And two people that you probably know, Don Baker and Josh Matthews, both athletic directors in Georgia, they had already started their very own popular podcast called Hanging with the AD. And they would interview ADs and leaders, very similar to what I do. I stole their format, and they had me on. And it was just so cool to talk about, your coaches and your kids and your program, that I was thinking, hey, I could do this for our Florida athletic directors and let them share their story. And it just took off in a way I never would have imagined. I think the first month we had something like maybe 40 downloads or something. And now 4 years later, we're heard in all 50 states. We're heard in 93 countries around the world. I think we got a pretty decent following in our little niche, but I never planned it, but it was something that kind of, like I said, fell into my lap. I enjoy doing it. And I joke, as long as people keep listening, I'll keep interviewing other leaders.
Is there somebody that you'd like to interview that's maybe outside of athletics or outside of leadership that you would just love to sit down with, that might have some insights or stories that could help educational leaders, but maybe like this great white whale that you're just hoping to get on your show one day?
Well, we have been very fortunate. We have had you on the show, and so that checked one of our bucket list guest boxes. I've reached out to, let's say, some big names. For example, I reached out to Billie Jean King during the 50th anniversary of Title IX, and did not for a second think that she would respond. I'm sure she gets a million requests like that. Somebody from her office sent me a nice email, thank you for reaching out. Schedule will not allow her to appear. I guess, I guess as a football coach, some of Belichick and Saban, I would love to have them on and pick their brain. I've become a much bigger fan of Nick Saban, as he's been on College Game Day this year. I was probably still a little bit resentful when he bailed on the Miami Dolphins, whatever it was, 15 years ago, but I've forgiven him. But no, somebody like that. But I think our niche has been, and we've had Hall of Famers, we've had ADs of the year, we've had presidents of the NIAAA, but I think our niche is kind of that rank and file, lunch pail AD, if you will, and to let them share their stories, because I think they have just as much value as that Hall of Famer. And then the last thing I'll say, well, at least on this tirade, is we've done over 1,000 segments, 600 full interviews of about an hour. The rest are shorter segments, but over half of those 1,000 segments have featured women leaders, women ADs, women coaches. And again, my wife's a Hall of Fame coach. I've got 2 daughters, also have a son. And so, being able to promote, that side of the topic has been important for us.
Well, you said, I think your phrase was like lunch pail ADs, or that's the thing with ADs too, is that they're right there on the front lines. They're putting in the work daily, underappreciated most of the time, overworked, underpaid, or at least underappreciated. And, they're doing the Lord's work, right there, like I said, on the front lines. But a lot of times ADs, they have some of the same issues as each other do, but they're not competitive in terms of, they're not going to hold ideas or insights close to their vest. They're going to help out their peers. Whereas coaches, sometimes there's that competition. Oh, I'm not going to tell Jake, what's going on, because he might end up beating me, or he might end up out recruiting me for some kid. So coaches tend to be very isolated. ADs tend to come together and help each other a lot of times, which I think your podcast has facilitated quite nicely.
Oh, I appreciate you saying that. And you are absolutely right that, coaches, they'll share a little bit, but they're not going to share everything. Athletic directors, they can't wait to back up the dump truck and just unload everything. Well, have you tried this? Have you thought about that? It's just such a different mindset. And I think that's where we've, found part of our niche is helping with that networking. Well, geez, that sounds like a really good idea. I'm going to email that guy, or I'm going to call that AD up because she gave out her cell phone on the podcast. And we've made those, we've facilitated those connections. That's what makes me feel good.
Yeah, the whole cell phone thing reminds me of when I went to be an athletic director, and the secretary asked me what I wanted on my business cards, and I put my cell phone, and she's like, "Are you crazy? No administrator ever puts their cell phone on their business card." I'm like, "Why?" Because I came from the college level, and I'm like, "What? Why is that?" She's like, "You'll be surprised. You're going to get every crazy calling your cell phone and texting you and all that kind of stuff." But I know it's not the same because you don't have a bunch of crazies listening to the Educational AD podcast. But it just, I always think about that when ADs give out their cell phone. I remember back to, "Are you crazy?"
Yeah. No, and we've had a couple. We had one of our weekly series a couple years ago with Dan Talbot. He's the county athletic director here in Polk County in Florida. Great guy. I mean, just a great guy. Every single episode, well, somebody wants to get in touch with me. Here's my cell phone. And it's just going out there over the airwaves. So God love him.
That's fine. But you took the podcast and you've kind of turned it into a book or a couple books, which has been very helpful. Another great tool, actually, that's in the name, the Toolbox, that the AD's Toolbox. And talk about where that idea came from to turn some of the best from the podcast into a book to further help and add value to ADs.
Well, again, full credit, because there's a couple of people, and again, one thing leads to another. For years, we had a couple of ADs, one in particular, she's retired now, Jerry Kelly here in Florida. Every year at our state conference, she would do a workshop called the New Athletic Directors Toolbox. And she and others, would share some of those, nuts and bolts, AD 101 items for new and even some returning ADs. When I was getting ready to start the podcast, again, I stole liberally from Don Baker and Josh Matthews and their podcast, but I like the idea of the AD Toolbox. And so one of our standard questions since day one, what are 3 things that you would want to give to a brand new AD? And I think we had done maybe, I'm just going to throw out 100 episodes or something. And talking to one of my peers, friends, I would probably even say a mentor, Mike Elson out of Tennessee. He kind of encouraged me, hey, why don't you do a podcast segment on the top tools so far, the top 10. And so I took all the tools that have been submitted, put it into a spreadsheet. I had Mike and Lisa Langston, former NIAAA president, the AD for the Dallas-Fort Worth ISD. I had the 2 of them help me present them on a podcast. And it was a lot of fun. And at the end of it, I'm talking with Mike, and Mike goes, Jake, this would be a great book. And I go, you think so? And that's how the first Toolbox book came about. And we just kept doing interviews. So there was a second edition, the third edition, which included our 500th full interview. That came out just about a year ago. We unveiled it at the national conference. We're still doing interviews. I think today's or maybe tomorrow's episode is number 611. So maybe this time next year, 2025, the 4th edition will come out. And again, people seem to like the format. It's not Jake saying, well, you should do this, but it's ADs from across the country and from around the world just sharing their best practices. So sometimes it's nice to hear somebody else say, well, hey, this is something that I do, and you're already doing it. It's kind of that reinforcement. Hey, maybe I'm not a dope. Or you read their suggestion and you go, wow, I've never thought of that. And so again, I enjoy doing the interviews. I have time to spare, and people seem to enjoy it. So that's why we keep doing it.
Well, if there's an athletic director watching this right now and they would like to be on the podcast, they have not been on your podcast. I know that sounds strange that there's somebody out there that hasn't been on your podcast because you've had like a bajillion episodes. No, not really. You've had 600 interviews coming up, a little over 600 interviews. But if there's an AD out there, what's the best way to get in touch with you to be on the podcast?
Absolutely. Send me an email, and my email is very easy. It's all one word, Jake's Touchdown at gmail.com. Shoot me an email. Said you heard it on the Success is a Choice podcast. We'll not only get you on our podcast, but we'll send you a nice gift as an acknowledgement to Jamy and everything that he does for our profession.
Wow. That's a great little offer. So appreciate that. But Jake's Touchdown at gmail.com. Get in touch with Jake to be on his podcast. Yeah, it's a great podcast for ADs, for educational leaders in general. So maybe it's something that you did when you were an athletic director. Maybe it's something that you've seen other athletic directors do, or maybe it's something that you've heard on your podcast. But what's a thing or two that you see other ADs or leaders doing to grow their coaches or grow their leaders that you really like? Because, leadership, sometimes we get this mistaken notion that leadership really is just about having compliant followers. Just do what I tell you to do. But more often than not, the best leaders are people who are growing and developing other leaders. And so what are some things that you've seen or heard of along the way that is just good advice for how to grow other leaders?
Again, I was an AD for, almost 30 years. I was a teacher and a coach and an AD for 41 before I retired. Now I've been doing this for 4 years. I don't know how many original, great ideas I had, but I did pride myself on being smart enough to notice, hey, that person's doing a pretty good job. How are they doing that? And either talking to them or literally just stealing their idea. Some of the best advice that I can give, and again, this is not, Jake's not the author of this. And I can say this, I became a much better AD and coach the longer I did it. I look back at some of my early years and I kind of shake my head. Boy, my bosses were very patient and understanding with me. I guess two things in particular. One is never underestimate the power of listening. When you've got that parent in your office and, as long as they're being respectful, they're not F-bombing you, but as they're venting, just listen and try to see if you can figure out if there really is an issue you can fix or if they're just venting. Okay. But just the power of listening. And that was something that took me a very long time to learn and appreciate. And once I did, I was just, wow, this is so much better. Another one, this is a specific example. When I was hired as the athletic director at my final stop, the McClay School in Tallahassee. McClay School is one of the top schools, not just in Florida, but on the East Coast, academically, athletically. So they had been around for a long time. And while I was there as the AD, I managed not to drive it off the rails. But that summer when I was hired, I sent out an email to every single one of our coaches, head coach, assistant, middle school, you name it, probably about 88 different people. And I said, hey, I'm Jake Von Scherrer, excited to be here. I'm in my office all summer. Please stop by. Just want to talk to you and, have a chance to get to know you. And almost every single coach did come in over those, 5 or 6 weeks. And we had, at the time, 3 coaches who, either while I was there or shortly after I left, went into our state Hall of Fame. They were great coaches. And we had some young coaches, new coaches, we had everything. But anyway, here's what I said to every single coach when they came in. What can I do as the AD? What can I do to make your job more fun? What are some things that I can take off of your plate? The previous, the system that was in place, the coaches did all of their scheduling, all of their buses, all of their facilities, you name it. Some of them loved doing it. Others were just overwhelmed because they were teaching and doing everything else. And for those coaches, I took it all off their plate. The data entry, entering athletes on rosters and checking eligibility and all that, that was on them. I wasn't teaching, I wasn't coaching. I had time to do it. And so by coming in with that approach, how can I help you? Instead of saying, this is what we're going to do, which was my style at my previous stops as an AD, because I had been hired at those schools as, I remember one of my bosses said, Jake, that athletic department is the Wild West. They need a new sheriff. That wasn't the case at Maclay. So by coming in with that different style, I got a lot of instant credibility. Now I had to back it up. I had to help, continue to help those coaches, but several of them, including those 3 Hall of Fame coaches, over the next couple of months, they all caught me at different times and just said, hey, thanks for doing that. Nobody's ever asked us that before. And I had a coach that had been there for like 30 years. They'd won like 5 or 6 state championships. And, here he was, thanking me. So listening and taking that approach of, what can I do to help you? Yeah, there's going to be standards, and this is what we're going to adhere to. This is our, performance line or whatever you want to call it. But having that, attitude of being a servant leader and then following through, I just wish I would have done that at my previous stops.
Well, you've been in education a long time, coach, administrator. You've written books. You've had over 600 episodes on a podcast. So you must have the magic wand. You must have the secret sauce to how to work with parents. What are some tips, advice, some insights you can give the listeners on how to work with parents?
Oh my goodness. Well, again, it's a journey. As a young coach, and then as a not so young but younger AD, when I first started, it was very much old school. Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, we got this. You stay in your lane. We'll take care of all the athletic stuff. And that style, I don't know if it worked that well back then, but it certainly doesn't work now. I guess a couple of things. As an AD, you have to be equal parts clear. This is how we roll, school policy, department policy, et cetera. And then you've got to be very transparent in communication with those parents when things might not be following that way because you have a coach that's gone rogue. Here's an example. At our school, this was middle school. This was not varsity. For our middle school teams, we told our parents, our philosophy, it's fun and fundamentals. Yeah, we want to win. And there's going to be a couple of schools, and we would name those 2 schools. We want to beat these schools. Okay. But the other schools, yeah, we're probably going to beat them anyway, but that's where you're going to see, a lot of playing time. And I would tell our coaches that, and for the most part, our coaches did a great job. And if I got that phone call from Mr. Smith or Mrs. Jones about, hey, I was at the middle school game and my kid didn't play. First I checked the opponent. Then I would talk to the coach. And he goes, yeah, it was, XYZ school. We wanted to beat them. It was a tough game. And I would remind the coach, and sometimes the coach would let me know ahead of time, we're playing, John F. Kennedy School on Thursday. All these kids that started, they're going to sit and everybody else is going to play. So if that coach is not subbing and not playing the kids, and I would tell our coaches, I don't want to see kids growing cobwebs on the bench. If they're not supporting you, that's going to be a huge problem with those parents because you told them what your program is going to be like. So clear communication, and then making sure that you are inspecting what you expect by going to the games and talking to your coaches, that sort of thing. And just apply that to, every other facet of your program. This is how we roll. This is who we are, whether it's student behavior in the bleachers or, anything. Clear communication, and then make sure you're following up.
Well, this has been Jake Von Scherrer. He is the host of the Educational AD podcast. And for any of you out there listening or watching this, if you know Billie Jean King or Bill Belichick or Nick Saban, pass along the email so they can get on the Educational AD podcast and drop some nuggets, drop some wisdom on the educational community, the AD community. But Jake, we appreciate all that you're doing for high school ADs, coaches, which ultimately helps the student athletes, which is what it's all about. So we appreciate all that you're doing, and thank you for joining us today.
Oh, right back at you, my friend. Again, huge fan. And for listeners, we've had Jamy down at our state conference. He's presented, he is a speaker on a national level. So, you're probably already following, but tell the rest of your network that they need to start following Jamy Bechler and Success is a Choice.
Oh, I appreciate that. You didn't even get paid for that. So I appreciate the shout out there. But for everybody watching this, everybody listening, thank you so much for doing this. Share the show, share it with a friend of yours, or even share it with enemies. That's fine. We don't discriminate. So share the show with somebody that might find some value in it. Go ahead and tap that little like button or the notification button, but not too hard where you break your screen on your phone or tablet, but tap that button just gently. But until next time, remember that success is a choice. What choice will you make today?